Welcome back. It is now Monday the 19th of September and we've had a fairly warm night. It stayed about 10 degrees overnight last night. Today is not going to be a great day for spraying. We have a forecasted high of about 13 degrees. It's supposed to stay cloudy all day and start raining about 3 p.m. So I'm not recommending doing any post-harvest spraying this morning. Also, we're supposed to have high winds come up at about 10 o'clock. So much better off to wait till tomorrow, as long as we don't get too much rain. Tomorrow's supposed to be cooler, 13 degrees, but also sunny, so it should be better conditions. If the sun is out, the weeds are going to be more active. They're going to be taking stuff in. If it's going to be overcast, then they're not going to be super active, so they'll be a little slow doing uptake, especially when it's 10 degrees. So wait till tomorrow. Well, fields like this that are still loaded with volunteer barley, we really should now be spraying out. They haven't been killed by frost yet, and they're still growing actively. And with fertilizer prices the way they are, and with moisture being an irreplaceable commodity out here the last few years, we really cannot afford to let this continue growing and using moisture and nutrients. With nitrogen, over $1,100 a ton, and phosphate even more than that, it is too expensive to let this continue growing. Well, winter wheat is getting seeded into the potato stubble. This has been in the ground for a couple of days, and you can see we're germinating pretty good. So right now is statistically pretty much the best time of the year to be seeding your winter wheat is September 17th. Anything before that or after that, there's a little bit of a yield curve where it starts to drop off. So of course that's the average year, and every year really is quite different. So overall, this has gone into the ground at a very good time and has potential for very good yield next year. Well, we're now getting a little bit of a cold rain out here, so that has pretty much shut down harvest for the day in some of the remaining canola. In this field here, this is pea stubble, so this was harvested about a month ago, and at the time we hit it really hard with a good shot of glyphosate and some heat in order to get the thistles burned down, and we did a pretty good job overall, but there is a few that are starting to come back here and there. So now that we're getting some colder weather and we're getting into that fall window for spraying, it is a much better time to get really good control on your thistles. So we're going to be coming into this field with probably some DB878. Hit these guys with a shot of dicamba and glyphosate, and that'll do a really good job doing a fall burn-off, and it'll do a good job taking care of these dandelions and stuff like that in here, as well as the volunteer peas, which are now popping up everywhere. Here in this field, we've got some fall rye that has just been seeded about 2 days ago, so it is just starting to germinate. Placement is relatively shallow at about 3/4 of an inch in this spot here, but overall there's good moisture in the seed row and it should be out of the ground right away, so looking good so far. This field has been pre-burned before seeding here, so this was about 2 days ago with glyphosate and Express Pro with a bit of 2,4-D added in, and you can see this canola is hurting pretty bad. 2,4-D generally does a pretty good number on volunteer canola, and the Express helps as well. I found a new way to dig seed row target here. Accuracy and precision is not great, but 10 out of 10 for enthusiasm. Well, this corn by Lethbridge has definitely developed quite a lot in the last week. You can see this field here, we are really well dented now. Kernels themselves are very firm and hard. There's very little milk left in them. We're really got a nice solid hard starchy cap on these guys now. So these are pretty much just going to start drying down from here. But you can see by the appearance of the corn itself, it hasn't had any hint of frost or anything yet on it. So it is still very green and very lush. So even though these are at a pretty decent developmental stage, the crop itself is just a bit too moist for silaging yet. So we'll probably get some corners done here, but not a whole lot yet. Now that this field of corn has been opened up with the single pass through the center here, we can really walk through and get a better idea of the level of corn borer damage. So you can see there is quite a few tops and tassels that have lodged here that have been chewed through. You can see this one is all full of sawdust here. You can see some more in the ear here. So definitely something to keep an eye on, but right now it's a relatively minor impact. It's more cosmetic almost than anything. All that material is still harvestable, will still add up to tonnage. However, if we were to get a killing frost in here and these ears start to droop, any of these ears that have been bored through at the base are going to be way more susceptible to break and fall off, and that is a loss. But right now we're not seeing that yet at this time. Here by Picture Butte, I have some pretty nice looking winter wheat coming out of the ground. This was seeded pretty early. It was, I think, early in the first week of September. So we're mostly coming up into that second leaf stage. Some starting to put out third leaf already. So this is definitely ahead of the curve, which hopefully will not hurt it too much during the winter. But looking pretty good for now. Here we have a little weed popping out of the manure, and this is a seedling dandelion. So you can see the cotyledons, and the first true leaf is just starting to emerge. So these guys are technically kind of a winter annual, so this guy's going to get going now. And in the spring, he will have a head start on his competition. So winter annual dandelion. Oh, we've now officially had our first real killing frost. We did get down to -1 last night. So these oats right now are still looking pretty good. I don't see any visual frost damage on them, but typically frost damage doesn't fully show up for 2 to 3 days. You will notice a very brown appearance to the flag leaves on this, and this was from moisture and heat stress back from September 3rd. Basically fried all the tips of these leaves as they were coming out of their, the boot stage basically. So most of these are the penultimate leaves, and the flag leaves themselves look fine. They emerged after that heat event. But there is also a little bit of yellow dwarf going on in here. So you can see we do have some stunted plants here and some disease damage on some of these leaves. A few of them turning purple here and there. Well, the corn is showing a little bit of frost injury this morning. Some of these upper leaves up at the top are definitely a little leathery feeling this morning. So we will probably start to see these tops will start to dry down pretty rapidly now after this frost. Probably wasn't a bad enough frost to get very far down in the canopy, so we'll kind of see what happens over the next few days, but it'll definitely speed up dry down, and more of this corn will start to come off here right away. Well, last night's frost is definitely putting an end to my pumpkin growing season. I had this protected under a tarp, but the vine is pretty much toast, so might as well take this inside and protect it from the frost. We'll see how much it weighs. Well, the Croplan knife and sheath is officially done. I have this leather sheath custom made for it, so this is kind of a cross draw ambidextrous, goes on your belt on the front like that, so the hilt sticks out towards your right side, or it can also go the other way on your back, left side as well, so kind of handy. So this is going to be up for competition with Croplan. So you buy 16 bags of canola or 160 acres, you get your name entered in the draw for this from any AgroPlus location. Well, it's Friday now, and after that frost the other day and the cooler, rainier weather there yesterday, you can see some of this corn has definitely started to die back, especially right here. We're just on the pivot access road, and you can see the frost pretty much was able to affect the whole plant just because this plant was on the edge. So let's take a look at the more interior of the field. So now once we get more into the middle of the field, you can still see the tops of these plants have been frosted down to probably about this level here, about shoulder height for me. So the ears are still looking pretty good. They're developing fine. Lower leaves, there's a little bit of frost on them here and there, but overall they're pretty good. So these heads are going to continue developing. These ones are a little bit immature yet. We'd like to see a little bit more starch build up in here. But really, now that it's been frosted, this overall moisture is going to start drying down. So we're probably going to have to take this off here pretty soon. Taking a corn silage sample. If you're doing this regularly, you probably should have a wood chipper in the back of your truck. I don't, I just have a parang. So I'm just going to take like 10 plants, whatever, chop them up, and we'll run them through the machine, and we'll see how she does as far as moisture goes. Here is some CP21T3P canola standing in the field. So this is just getting harvested here, although there was of course a pause yesterday while it rained, so the combines are still sitting here waiting for things to dry down. But this has been standing here for quite some time, and it's looking pretty good as far as pod integrity goes. I think this is actually one of the highest rated canolas in the Roundup Ready class that we have for pod shatter. It is looking very good considering some of the weather it's stood through. Here you can see down on the ground underneath the stand here, there is the odd pod here and there. There's a group of 3 right there. But other than that, there's very little for broken pods down here on the ground, considering this has been standing for weeks dry. Well, that'll be it for this week. There's not a whole lot going on out in the fields, really, other than some corn starting to come off and sugar beets. And I never made it out to any sugar beet places this week. Meetings and spreadsheets and crop planning is starting to take up an increasing proportion of my time, so I'm afraid there won't be nearly as much material next week, but we will see where things go. So we'll see you next time.